there's a lot of people who are, I'm almost 55 who are listening to this show that are, between 40 and 55 that are managing this generation. And we grew up without the ability for work-life. Let me rephrase that. Without the ability to voice our concern for work-life balance. You'd be
That's right.
ostracized. You could be demoted, fired, if like, well, I want to go to this dinner party instead of doing this project tonight. This generation Z won't stand for that. And they're the majority of our new workforce. So where does employee well-being balance against the company's got to make money or none of us have jobs? Like, I just love your professional opinion on that based on the work you've done.
Well, so the premise of your question, I could not agree more with. I mean, it's a different time, and the paradigm that the workforce brings today is wildly different than the way you and I grew up. I'll be 50 in a couple of months, so I think it's safe to say we grew up in the same era. And you're also right about my intention with the 10 W's. I found most organizations do a decent, if not better than decent job bringing talent into the organization. Hey, here's how you do the job. Here's the repository of all of our policies and procedures. Here's the checklist, for your role. I think we do an okay job by and large teaching folks how to do the X's and O's of their job. Where most organizations and most leaders, including myself, have fallen short is saying, here are the expectations and how we would prefer you to behave inside of this team. Setting an expectation and list of standards, because a principle, by the way, these are 10 principles. By definition, a principle is a system for foundational beliefs. It's kind of the things that we subscribe and hold true. And I've found if we get a group of people, I don't care if it's the Boy Scouts, the bowling team, the chess team, or a team inside of a workplace, if we get a group of humans to align around a series of principles, like we do the right thing, we lead by example, we take action, we say what we're going to do, and then we do it, you are much better positioned for great results. You're much better positioned for tighter bonds. And ultimately, from that becomes this work-life scenario that most people can live with. Because we recognize we all bring baggage. We recognize that while you're down, it's my responsibility as your teammate, as a human, to pick you up. So I don't know that I would say it's directly focused at a work-life balance, but I would say if these principles are adopted and subscribed to, and I don't want to sound too self-grandizing. What's the word? I don't want to be too self-grandizing here, because I don't really care, frankly, if you use the 10 W's. But what I do care is you establish your leadership principles, the non-negotiables, and you evangelize them and communicate them and share with them and interact with them and lean into them, especially in times of adversity. When we go back upstream and say, here's who we are, here's how we expect our behavior to be, how we treat one another behind the curtains. I'm not even talking about how we treat those we serve externally yet, because if we're high functioning behind the curtain, the odds of us delivering excellence externally are exponentially increased.
Yep.
And with that comes this environment, this vibe, this what I call culture of excellence, where we care a hell of a lot about each other, which only helps the results become what they are. And if we face adversity, we're going to rally shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm to take that adversity on.
So again, I want to just rewind the tape just a hair to where you said, if your environment, like 2 points that you said, is your environment ripe for you to make these changes? Is your environment right? I want you to share your guidance and advice, your expertise with listeners on if they're in a workplace, whether it's 100-person company or 100,000 people in a company, if the culture isn't right, but they want it to be different, what can they do? And or should they just go find another place to work?
So I'm not the guy to stand here and tell you that you're going to drive massive change alone, especially the bigger the organization. We talked about it before we press record. I mean, there are environments that are just too toxic. The dysfunction runs too deep, and it's more than one person can take on. So if you're evaluating whether or not this is a scenario in which you can thrive, only you can answer that question. Now, if you're in a position of what I say authority, and I say a position of authority because there's a big difference between a boss and a leader. But if you have direct reports, it's an obligation of you to create an environment for that team, not necessarily with, but perhaps in spite of all the noise around you, including maybe a boss that doesn't recognize you for the value that you bring. It's just a decision you have to make when you're promoted or into a position where you're leading others. A lot of times, and I hate to say it this way, what's happening around you doesn't matter because now you are in charge, not of people, but you're in charge of making sure that this team delivers excellence, or else you wouldn't have been placed in the role. So I, I put it this way: if I recognize that my little team has an opportunity to be higher functioning, take care of one another, and subscribe to a series of beliefs that might unite us, I need to run that. I need to run that race. It is incumbent upon me, and it comes with the territory of being a leader. If you've gone that route and you feel as if you're continually, say, running uphill with a parachute on, and you're not able to be your best, you're not finding fulfillment, you're not feeling valued, that tough decision might be a little easier for some. But at the end of the day, it's scenario driven. I will just tell you from experience, and I think you would second this. On the other side of that really scary proposition is an opportunity to find a level of fulfillment and impact that you probably weren't going to find in the role that you're in today. But again, it's situational. And I mentioned it earlier. If you got commitments and things that are keeping you connected to that role, that company, I get it. I get it. But the last thing you should do, even in that environment, is just turn a blind eye, keep your head down, and do this lather, rinse, repeat thing. You're not doing anybody any favors, especially yourself.